Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the board workshop. Today is June 9th, and on our agenda today, first of all, we have no public comment. Okay. On our agenda today, we have a public hearing which is required, a presentation of the Wagner and Cooper turnaround plan. We're going to do budget workshop number 6, which will have a lot of media updates in there, and in addition to that, we're going to talk about specifically our delay of the 25-26 compensation plan. And then lastly, projects that our bond savings team has recommended for using bond savings for funding in the next year. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our two principals here, Danielle Holloway and Angie Harris and Heather Stoner.
All right, thank you, Dr. Padaville. So as Dr. Padaville shared, we're required to do a public hearing for our turnaround plans for Cooper and Wagner. They've been working hard on these plans. They're multiple years in creation because they're based off of the cycle of school improvement, with the ultimate goal being that any school that's received an F rating reaches that C rating. So that's what they have in mind when they're creating their plans. And we talked a little bit about a targeted improvement plan. We did that for Cooper earlier this year. You guys approved it. And Wagner did one several years ago. If you look at the data, this is from the 2023, this is a result of this turnaround plan, is because of the 2023 scores that were very recently, end of April 24th, they were released. And so those ratings spurred this requirement. And then like for Wagner, they did a targeted improvement plan, but it was way back in 2018, because you know how assessment cycle went. You had 2018, 2019, 2020 was COVID, 2021 scores weren't released, 2022 scores weren't released, so there's just kind of been off and on. So even though we're talking about a plan that applies to next school year, it's from data from several years ago. So they must be approved by the school board and by the Texas Education Agency. So we have to have it submitted, approved by the board, and submitted to TEA by June 30th. And then they review it, hopefully approve it. If not, we get some chances to update it. So as I mentioned, Cooper and Wagner, Cooper is in that year 2, they did that targeted improvement plan this last school year. So based on 2023, they're now developing a turnaround plan. And Angie's going to share some components of that, highlights of that plan. And then Danielle's going to share Wagner's plan. And again, they're another year ahead of Cooper, which is why theirs is the actual implementation year of their plan.
So in regards, before we go any further, in regards to this, trustees, I just have to share something with you, which is it's too early to share student performance data from this year, 2025. And we have, internally, we have a lot of indications that we saw significant growth across the district, but specifically with these two schools, we saw some growth. However, this is a compliance requirement that's upon us based upon when the 2023 rating came out. We have to do this action return.
So our school improvement strategy was basically taken from best practice, but then also from the feedback from our parents and our staff. We dug pretty deeply into the data to kind of look and say, where do we need to start, right? When you're turning something around, where do we need to start? The key words that came up consistently were communication from families, outcomes, just measurable outcomes, and then behavior. I mean, that was probably the top thing that everyone was giving us feedback. We've done several feedback conversations with families. We're doing another one tonight, and had really good input from those conversations. People really are contributing to the discussion, both families and teachers, so that's been very, very helpful. Did one this morning with teachers. Again, we had 18 teachers show up over the summer, right? And just say, hey, this is what we're hoping for. This is what we think will help our school grow. So based upon that kind of put together some big rocks. The big one for families and for teachers is right there on that systematizing behavior. You can kind of click on this little link if you have it and peek at the plan. It's I don't know if it shows up if I do this, but or not. But if you have the slides, you can click on the plan, and you can see that there's quite a bit of data that backs that up. In a nutshell, we want to have 1, 2, 3 chances to fix it with our kiddos. We want to basically have an opportunity for everyone in the entire school in K-5 to be on the same page. And we want to have all hands on deck. So we've come up already with, and you can see that in the plan, with a little support system that anytime a teacher or a staff member feels that there is an issue with a kiddo, that they're using a little QR code right around their neck, and they're 1, 2, or 3. I think it's this urgency, or this urgency. And our commitment to our staff is that someone gets tagged in that, and it says, this is an action step for a counselor. This is an action step for an AP. This is an action step for our school-based therapist. And basically, each time that QR code is done, it's tagged to someone so that everyone has eyes on the kiddo. This is an action plan for a case manager, for a SPED case manager to come. So this is something that we're excited about implementing because I think it will take, we even practiced it today as the staff, it'll take less than a minute for a teacher to do that. And it allows us to have lots of eyes on the problem, right? So for kiddos, it's very clear. You have 3 chances to fix it. Chance 1, you go to the calming corner. It's your chance to fix this problem. Chance 2, you're going to go to a buddy classroom and connect there. Chance 3, we do a walk and talk. And our goal is to keep kids in class. Make it very visible, very simple, that this is what we're doing. That doesn't mean that there's not a consequence attached, right? But a consequence, a delayed consequence, is still a consequence. And so the goal is to stay in class, but still have that positive and that consequence attached to that. And then doing tiered supports for those helps and consequences. That's the big rock that parents and teachers are concerned about the most. The second one is communication of outcomes. That is something that I think everyone is really interested in, clear communication about, are we making progress with behavior? Are we making progress with academics? I attached a little snapshot there. You can see that when we're talking K-5, this doesn't have to look like, a 3-page report. What it needs to look like is clear, visible targets. And it can be friendly, it can be easy to access. Kids need to know how they're doing, parents need to know how they're doing, and teachers need to know how they're doing. So that's monthly. That snapshot date comes out monthly, or that report comes out monthly. It's got skills, standards, and behavior. And we can really just take a quick look at how we're doing as a school very quickly there. The third one is coherent tiered instruction. And so there's a little rationale folder there for you. What we're really looking at is looking at our core instruction, our grade level standards and materials, and we've got some great new curriculum offerings in Savas, and I'm very, very excited about that because I think it will really elevate that for everyone. But basically, we're looking at providing tiered intervention that is connected directly to what they're learning. So if a kiddo is struggling today with fractions, we are looking directly at their intervention piece being related to what they're struggling with fractions. So a lot of times what tiered intervention can look like is disconnected from the academics that a student is getting. For example, they might be struggling with fractions, And so we say, well, we're going to give them academic support because, gosh, they can't do anything, right? And so we put them maybe in addition or subtraction because they're struggling with that. That's not directly connected with what they're learning in class. And so the impact is just a little bit lower. Do they need to learn addition and subtraction? Absolutely. But what they're struggling with right now and what's keeping them from this right now, say in fractions, is that they don't know their times tables. So the academic, they can't do keep, change, flip because they understand the concept. Fraction is a piece of something, but they can't do keep, change, flip because they don't understand the multiplication. So really giving them that just-in-time support, this is what's keeping you from that. And doing that in a very, very targeted and cohesive and aligned way. Those are our big rocks. It's a lot, but I think we can do it, and I think it's really going to make a big impact on how Cooper does next year. I'm very excited about those big pieces.
Thank you, Dr. Harris.
Okay,
All right, Ms. Holloway.
talk about Wagner. You're gonna hear some similarities between Cooper's plan and Wagner's plan. We did some feedback with our staff even before we knew we were gonna be required to do a turnaround plan, just really reflecting on the work we had done this year. We did have quite a few outcomes that were really promising based on the work we've done this year. And so really trying to honor that, but also what's the next level if we're gonna expand and grow upon what we've been doing. And so you'll see a little bit of both, things that we've worked to grow this year and then how we're gonna level that up as we expand into next year. Our prioritized instructional strategies kind of grouped them into 3 different categories. Delivery of instruction being really foundational, of course. This year we really worked on designing lessons through the gradual release model, that lens. And that's really to ensure that we're not direct teaching for 40 minutes and kids have very limited time to work with the content themselves, that we're really trying to balance that out. We give the right amount of direct teach from the teacher, there's some collaborative time amongst kids, and then there's some independent time to process their learning on their own so that we can really see what did that student learn from this lesson and then be able to measure that. This year, is not surprising, we increased structured writing opportunities across our campus, and so really wanting to lean into that work, beef that up throughout next year as well. Yes, to help with ECRs and SCRs, but also it's another form of students being able to show what they know, and a teacher to be able to assess what students know in their content. Increasing student discourse within learning activities is part of the gradual release model, not something we saw enough of last year, and so that's something that we're definitely leveling up on and kind of leaning into next year. That will work on ELPs, making sure that kids can speak about their learning, making sure they're using academic vocabulary. It's also another way for teachers to measure a student's level of mastery of that standard, and so that's something that we want to just increase and get really intentional about those structured discourse opportunities. Monitoring student progress, we did a lot of really solid work this year and have a good foundation, but this is something that the teachers were overwhelmingly asking to lean into and grow their understanding and their skill set in this, which is, I mean, that's fun for a principal to hear teachers ask for that, and it's the right ask for sure. We worked really hard on common formative assessments, common summative assessments. Next year, that second bullet is really what we want to lean into. It's the real-time, everyday check for understandings. We have these very formal moments to stop and make sure everybody's with us before we move on, but doing that on a more consistent basis every day in a more simplistic, a little bit more informal method will help teachers catch kids in the moment, try to give them what they need before we continue forward. And questioning being a way to do that. What we've seen and we've talked about as a staff is questioning. We don't want it to be a method to move a lesson forward. We kind of wait for the answer and that's great, and then we keep going, that it's really used as a method to assess and see where kids are so that we can respond to that. The response to student progress is probably the most important thing that we're going to be leaning into and continuing the work that we've grown this year and that's really using small groups. We did a lot of that, especially in the spring, have a staff that are much more comfortable, which is exciting for a secondary campus to say, that they pulled small groups together and a teacher's working with those kiddos on exactly what they need. What we want to see and what teachers talked about was being able to do that more frequently and feel a little bit more comfortable in that process. When we've looked at data, which has been a process that we've embedded throughout this past year, sometimes we stayed a little too much in the trends, a little balcony level to some degree, and really talking about how do we make sure we drill down to the kid as often and frequently as possible. And so then that's something that we're looking into as well, just kind of beefing up the systems for that. For all of these instructional strategies, there's some ways that we're intentionally supporting that focus. One of which is implementing daily professional learning communities, or PLCs. And we went all in on that last year, saw a lot of really promising growth from our teachers. We saw outcomes from our kids. The collaborative spirit on campus is very different, even with the expectations being raised significantly this past year. And so we'll continue doing that. Our core teachers and SPED resource teachers meet daily for PLCs, and it's a very structured, follows, if you're familiar with the DeFore 4 questions, it follows that to the T. We also have been intentional this hiring season of hiring teachers that are highly qualified, that have experience with their content, and things have been going swimmingly in that direction, but also really focusing on people that have experience with PLCs so they can add to our knowledge bases. We're trying to continue growing that. And then lastly, we started this last year, we have a Wagner Instructional Culture Playbook. It's about 70 pages right now. It's intense. It's a little daunting at first. But we committed to the staff last year of if the expectations are really high, then you need to know exactly what those expectations are, where are they coming from, and how can you meet those. And so it outlines absolutely every aspect of our school. We're going through kind of this refinement stage as we're leveling up the work and adding some things, making sure that all of those things are updated in that playbook as well. And then we use that to train off of at the beginning of the year and throughout the year as well. Wagner in a nutshell.
Thank you.
All right, trustees, do you have any questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. I want to applaud you for the walk and talks, because as one who's been an assistant principal and you're dealing with behavior all the time, you can't change the behavior until you understand why it's there and the function of it. And the walk and talks are so less intrusive, and the student is much more apt to really be open. So I applaud that. Yeah, there's still consequences for that behavior, but we can't change it just by being punitive. We've got to understand it. So I'm curious to see how that goes this year.
Me too. I think it's going to go great.
I think so too.
This is a public hearing, so if there are any members of the public that have any questions in addition to our trustees.
Rachel, you got any questions?
Just a comment. I think what said Dr. Harris for the elementary school for Cooper, I'm thinking about the elementary extra time study and the implications hopefully of that and how that can be utilized in Cooper. Because that's rolling out in the next year, next school year, right? And then I'm wondering, I'm assuming part of this is you all would produce how you're going to monitor progress over time, so I don't need to hear about it, but it seems like being able to accurately see how these things are going and then adjust would be important.
Yeah. So if you kind of dig into that, a peek at the plan, there are actual metrics of what we're looking for in those areas. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
When will they update us on the progress of this again?
We'll do periodic updates throughout the school year on the progress of our schools. So is that what, or you speak?
Specifically these two schools, when will we hear how these implementations are going? We don't have a year to wait to hear again as a board of what the outcomes are.
So when yes sir, when 2025 ratings come out, that will impact these plans, but I will tell you that the two things our principals talked about are instructional expectations they are doing with or without this plan. So we can absolutely implement follow-ups with these two schools to ensure that progress is taking place the way it was articulated today.
Is there a thing, do you remember Book It? rent a book, somebody books, you got a free
Get
pizza.
got a pan
Pizza.
pizza. Yeah.
Do they still have anything like that?
They do.
What is it? Is it pizza?
Yeah, it's Pizza Hut. They still do that.
Yeah, it was a huge incentive for me to read, so.
It's always a motivation, yeah.
Absolutely, but yeah, if there's anything we can ever utilize a reward system.
A limousine ride.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, whether it's a dessert or, you know, something fun like that,
Yeah.
but sometimes it just takes a little bit of a reward.
Yeah.
you know.
It's a good point, like making sure the reward system are as rigorous as the
Absolutely.
consequence system.
Yeah, celebrate those.
Yeah.
This is a
And
great presentation, thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to budget workshop number 6.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nobody even responded.
Good afternoon. Is it a good afternoon?
These people are like, great, budget workshop 6.
The good news is this is our final budget workshop for this year. We
Yeah, that's
are
how
almost.
you gain
uh,
excitement last time.
Find the money.
Well, we will see. We're hoping that there's some money. Just to kind of refresh everyone, our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th. So we are finishing up 24-25 right now, and the new budget year will start on July 1st. There are 3 main budgets of the district and 3 budgets that the board approves each year. One is the general fund, which is the one that we talk most about, and that's the main operating fund of the district. The next biggest is the debt service fund, which is what we use to pay the principal and the interest on our bonds. And then we also have food service, which is our meal service for our students. So, like we said, this is our last budget workshop. We will bring the budget to the June 16th board meeting, which is next Monday. We are operating right now under what we're calling current law, which actually as of last week would be called prior law now, because the governor did sign the school funding bill. So for that, we're very optimistic, and we are glad that we're not going into special session and all those things that are dragging this out even further. There still are a lot of details, though, that it was a very large bill with very many pieces. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but there's a lot that's still being interpreted. So, and then we plan to bring you much more information about the new school finance bill on August 4th at that board workshop. So just to kind of remind us again about our tax rates, this year's tax rate, the M&O rate is 0.6969, the INS rate is 0.3575. So the total tax rate this year is 10544. Using the prior law, we are projecting an M&O rate of 0.6549, which would be a decrease. That would be tax compression from this year. However, that we may not see as much compression because a homestead exemption increase was approved, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But typically, the more homestead exception, the less the tax compression. We see it on one side or the other. It looks like we may see it more on the homestead side than the tax rate side. But for now, we're saying the INS rate would remain the same at 0.3575, so the total tax rate would be 1.0124. We actually don't set our M&O tax rate. TEA sets that, and they will give that to us in early August.
Last year, we set the tax rate in October?
September.
And then the absolute deadline to set the tax rate is?
September 30th.
September 30th,
Mhm.
okay.
Some districts, sometimes we do it in August, but when we have these legislative years,
Yeah, the
typically
later the better.
we have to wait until everything. And then again, we just talked about the homestead exemption.
going up. That's Senate Bill 4.
Question, so are we using that 0.6549 as like our, what we're using the model right now?
Yes.
But then we'll update it once we get it back.
And I don't think we're gonna see it at 0.6549. I think we're gonna see it higher than that. But again, that's because we have more homestead exemption. There's, the property tax relief can come in two forms. It can either come in a lower tax rate or it can come in a higher homestead. And this year they went with a higher homestead. Okay, so let's talk about the first fund, the big fund, which is general fund. Again, we are using current, which is now prior law. The assumptions are kind of just to go through them real quickly over on the left-hand side. We have not built any compensation or health insurance contribution increase into this budget. So compensation and health insurance is the same as the prior budget. We will be working on an amendment. We'll share with you at the board workshop in August and then bring a budget amendment in August to the board meeting. We are using the most recent demographer enrollment projections of 14,131, and that is an ADA of 13,141. That's at 93%, which we think is a conservative estimate. If we just want to look over on the right-hand side, just to kind of go through this, up at the top, revenues, we have three major categories of revenues. We have our local revenues, which are primarily property taxes. We have our state revenues, which is our entitlement from the state, and then we do get some federal revenues. So if we look at the 25-26 proposed budget column, we are projecting 151.1 million in local revenue, 18 million in state, and then 985,000 in federal. So that's a total of 170.2 million. And then if we look down at the expenditures, we break out the expenditures into 17 major categories throughout the district, which are the functions of the district. So we have, I don't want to go down each line, but I kind of want to draw your attention. Function 11, which is instruction, is our largest, that's our largest function. So that's over 50% of our budget goes towards classroom and instruction. If you go all the way down to function 91, which is contracted instructional services between public schools, you can see that's 18.6 million. That's the recapture that we send back to the state. We will see this number go down when we bring the budget to you in August, because we will be collecting less in property taxes. And then the third largest item of our budget, if you go to function 51, which is maintenance, that's 17.2 million, and that's 10% of our budget that we really cannot control those costs. That's our utilities, our property insurance, grounds, custodial. A lot of fixed costs are in that item. So just wanted to point out that's our third largest expenditure item.
In the maintenance, in function 51, is payroll represented in there as well?
Yes, yes. So on the next slide, we'll look at it. We'll look at the budget in a different way, payroll divided against the other expenditure categories. But this, yes, this includes payroll, everything. So we are projecting expenditures of 170.2 million, which is a balanced budget. We have worked, and I want to appreciate the efforts of everyone in this room and throughout the district. We've worked very, very hard to balance the budget, and had some extremely difficult conversations. But I think the efficiencies that we have seen and the cuts that we've made, we have really been very thoughtful and intentional, and so we are presenting a balanced budget.
And I just want to give credit to Jennifer Hanna as our CFO. This process of balancing a budget, which in a deficit environment, I think can take years off your life, and she's done it several times, and she's still standing. At the same time, because of that, of the parameters and the priorities the board set, that really helped give us clarity to getting to a balanced budget. And now, after we figure out House Bill 2, we're in a better position than some of our neighbors to consider compensation for our hourly employees and anyone who's not a third, fourth, or fifth plus year teacher, which is all that's covered in House Bill 2.
And I would like to echo Dr. Padaville also for the clarity and the direction from the board during the budget process. It really was very helpful, so I appreciate that. So if we go to the next slide to look at the general fund. So as you were asking on the prior slide, this is split out by major expenditure categories. So we have, if you start at the top, we have payroll, professional and contracted services, supplies, operating expenses, which are kind of our miscellaneous and our travel and our professional development, and then capital outlay. Capital outlay is very small in the general fund because most of our capital outlays is in the bond fund. We just have a small amount. So if we look at that middle column, which is the 25-26 proposed budget, payroll is 132.7 million of the entire budget, and that is a $2.6 million increase from the prior year budget. If you go down to professional contracted services, that's 9.9 million, which is a $3.3 million decrease.
What did we cut?
And if you recall, the largest part of that is our custodial contract. We are now going in-house. So that wasn't necessary. There was a cost benefit to that, but it was
It went into payroll.
right. The next line down, supplies, 5.3. We had a slight increase in that, 153,000. And then miscellaneous operating expenditures, 3.4 million. We had a slight increase from the prior year budget, 152,000. And then capital outlay, 173,000, which was actually a decrease of 15,000 from the prior year. And so those are our operating expenditures. If you go down to the bottom line, which is the recapture that we send back to the state, with the current model, we would be sending 18.6 million back to the state, which is actually an increase of 879,000 from the budget, the current budget.
The anticipation is the offset of the homestead exemption will be, so we'll end up at
It's gonna be
the same
a
spot
lot more than
basically.
that.
Numbers will move, but the end result will be about the same.
Yeah, we're gonna see actually where we think I'll show you, it's going down
Okay.
like 13 million. So.
Jennifer, just to confirm, the payroll number doesn't include any compensation increases. Okay. So that number also potentially is gonna go up.
Yes. So just to kind of look at a visual, those same category groups that we were talking about, payroll is 88% of our budget. That's the blue on the graph. The next highest expenditure we have, which is 7% of the budget, that's contracted services. Supplies, 3%. Other operating expenditures are at a little purple sliver, 1.9%. And then capital outlay is so small you can hardly see it, it's 0.1%. Okay, so let's talk about what we hope will be some additional funding. So the governor did sign House Bill 2 last week, so it is now law. There are lots of provisions. It's about, I think it's 63 pages long, or it's a very long bill. And so I just wanted to point out some of the high points of that bill, and even with these high points, there's still some clarity that's lacking that we're getting, every day as TEA is helping us interpret this and sends out information. But the biggest piece was what they're calling the teacher retention allotment. It's good news. It's $2,500 for teachers with 3 to 4 years experience. It's $5,000 for teachers with 5 or more years of experience.
And that's tacked on to like their base salary or maybe one time?
It's going to probably look like a stipend.
We won't call it a stipend on
Okay, just
pay
a couple,
plan.
but
Yeah, those are the types of details that TEA is still
working out.
rolling out. And they're also defining what a teacher is, which teachers are gonna receive this allotment is another question. So then, the next line down, the support staff retention allotment, which is $45 per ADA. This is to help, and this was one of the negotiations that the Senate and the House worked out, because we obviously have teachers that have 0, 1, and 2 years of experience, and we have many other support staff in the district. So they added $45 per ADA for all other staff.
Can you
Then-
break that one down more, like $45, just how?
How did they come up with that?
So
Yeah.
45,000 times 1,400?
Yeah, like, is that?
Yeah,
I
and
mean-
so, because they knew they wanted, what,
Times
$8.5 billion,
93%.
and so they, some of this is shuffling.
And
To
when we
be
get that bucket of money to distribute how we want,
No.
we got it right.
Well, the basic allotment, which is what we talk a lot about, we got a $55 increase in the basic allotment. So not the $1,000 that we were hoping for. So,
She said it was $3.
Love your delivery there. Yeah. $1,000.
So that one will be tagged, the first one will be tagged as something, and the bottom 55 will be free or
the bottom
disposable
55 is
revenue.
adding to the basic allotment that we can use for whatever we want to use.
Healthcare, more support, whatever. I mean, it's gonna get ate up very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
What is it, roughly 800 grand? after
Right.
you get
Well,
through everything?
yeah, even less than that. And the other bad news is that for us, it's actually not new money. It's taking that increase in the golden penny yield
And just making
and
it permanent.
replacing it. The one that we kind of skipped over was the allotment for basic costs, the ABC, they like to call it. And that was, again, part of the negotiations. So they did add $106 per enrollment. Some people in the state are really excited that they used enrollment for that,
Yes.
because we've been trying to go to more of an enrollment-based funding. So that was maybe a positive step, but that is what they basically are giving us for kind of those skyrocketing increases in property insurance and health insurance, and also to help cover the benefits on the teacher retention allotment and the support staff allotment, because it was noted that had not included that. So we pay about 11 to 13% in benefits on top of that. So again, those are just 4 of the biggest provisions. There are a lot of other ones that we will continue to talk about as we get more knowledge. And again, we are hoping to have that by the August 4th meeting to really dig in a little bit more. So that was the school funding bill. The other big bill that was also signed by the governor is Senate Bill 4. That's the property tax relief bill. It will go to the voters in November. Chances are it will get approved. I don't think we're really thinking that they won't. And that's the one that, and there's some other also homestead increases for the over 65, but the major one is 100 to 140,000. And we are still working through the hold harmless. So TEA, particularly on the INS side, we're still, they will help us to hold harmless from those revenues that we're not going to be receiving. But those are the types of formulas that we don't have clarity on yet. So just to kind of, we were talking about, what we thought we would see from the additional gain. This is a side-by-side. The first column is where we are proposing the budget, and then the second column is the very preliminary draft of what we hope we might see with House Bill 2. If you look at total revenues, they go down in that difference column by 6.3 million. That decrease is primarily due to the decrease in property tax collections. But then if you also go down to total expenditures, you'll see there's a $13.8 million decrease, and that's that decrease in recapture. So that is an overall gain of 7.4 million. Approximately 4.3 million of that is allotted through those allotments by TEA. So, and then we add for benefits the 504,000. So the net gain that we have to work with after the TEA requirements is 2,664,122. So that is what we would hope to be able to bring to you, with a compensation plan and increase in health insurance. We're working through those numbers.
The grand scheme of things, not a lot to work with. However, if you're a district that is at a deficit budget, then that's nothing to work with. So we're in a position where we can start to look at different scenarios and think about what's best to for our teammates, and then bring those to you to consider as well.
And the way they wrote Senate Bill 12, it's reoccurring too. This isn't
That's right.
this year thing, like it will continue unless in the future during session they change it again.
Yeah,
Like these are continued allotments.
It's, 2 years is what we know.
At least they kind of funded their mandates this time. That's nice of them.
I would say we made some gains. Not
Wait.
enough, but we did make some gains.
Do you have an idea of the timeline of when they'll start rolling out some of these clarifications to you?
They're starting now. We're starting to get emails, and I think they're really working hard to get this information.
So we think an August timeline is realistic?
I think it is realistic. I hope.
I know none of that's in your control, I'm just,
I feel like there's a lot of urgency there from just the emails and things that we're seeing.
okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to debt service. Again, our assumptions are prior to Senate Bill 4 passing, so we will be amending this budget in August as well. If you go down to the second bullet, for the 2024 bond that was passed in 2024, we issued the first tranche in August of last year, and we have started the planning for the issuance of the second tranche this summer. Some of Senate Bill 4 affects new issuances, so we're getting guidance on that as well to make sure that we're in compliance with Senate Bill 4, the timing and hold harmless and things. So if we go over to the budget on the if you look at the top part of the revenues, we have two revenue streams for debt service. One is local, which is property taxes. Two is state, and that's our hold harmless money that we've gotten from the state to make up for the loss in property taxes. Not the Senate Bill 4 that just passed last week, but even every 2 years we've seen property tax relief, and so that's where we get that hold harmless money from the state. And then for expenditures, 100% of debt service is paid for the principal and the interest and any fees of our debt service. So that also is a balanced budget, and we will amend it for Senate Bill 4 and also for when we do have the second tranche, when we know how much that principal payment will be for next year.
Are you anticipating anything that's going to limit the amount we can issue in the second?
I think because of the hold harmless,
Yeah.
it shouldn't, but I know our financial advisor is working on that scenario.
Jennifer, can you help us understand the strength of the fund balance?
Yes, so you can see there that fund balance is 62.6 million. So we make our first bond payment in August. We pay our bonds twice a year, once in August and once in February. The August payment is before we've gotten all our property tax collections. And so we need to have that in order to make our August bond payment, which is going to be about half, about 40 million, it's about half the total payment. And then we will receive all our property tax collections, and then we can pay our February payment with those property tax collections, because we get our tax collections in December, November, December, January, a little bit in February. That's where we get most of our tax collections, that time frame.
There are two separate fund balances that we reference.
Is the debt and the general?
Yeah,
This
this
is
is the debt service fund balance.
So the percentage we talk about is not, we don't measure this the same way in terms of our conversation the other day. That's-
Yeah, this is the, debt service fund balance. And we can't mix the funds, so. Okay, and the last big one is food service. Food service is a self-sustaining fund. It brings revenue in, and it pays for the food that we serve to our students. We have a 41% free and reduced students that receive aid from the federal level. And then also just of note, we contract out our food services with Southwest Food Excellence. If we look over at the budget, if we look at the revenues, we get local, that's from students and teachers and parents purchasing meals, and also from catering and the things that we do, the additional things. We get a little bit of state money, $29,000, and then federal is from our breakfast and our lunch reimbursement. That's budgeted at $4.1 million for a total of $7.5 million. And then, again, all of our expenditures are food service. So that would be everything. That's the contract that we pay. It's all, all our supplies, our payroll, because we do employ employees. And we project a balanced budget for the food service.
Trustees, are there any other questions? Moving forward with potential compensation discussion.
I do want to echo that Dr. Paddle's sentiment. Like, we know, the board knows how much work you guys put into finding a way to balance a budget in a very, very challenging and uncertain time. We really do appreciate all the effort from everyone in this room that went into accomplishing that. It was no small feat, and I will be surprised if any of your guys' peers are able to do what you guys did. So hopefully it puts us in a position to take care of all of you guys long into the future, and we really do appreciate how much effort and conversation and thought and tough decisions we put you guys in the position to make on our behalf and the community's behalf. So really thank you guys for the work this last year, honestly.
Thank you.
All right, well, there's not really a lot to talk about with compensation right now. Jennifer did a really good job in explaining the teacher retention allotment. We just wanted to emphasize that again. Just want to emphasize again that, all eligible teachers are not yet defined, and so that could have an impact on our local budget, depending on who we get funding for out of that 25 and 5,000. And then we are looking at options to bring in August that will take care of our 0, 1, and 2 year teachers as well. The support staff retention allotment is there as well. Again, I think Dr. Paddle mentioned this earlier. It's our hourly employees, all of our support staff. So also looking at options to bring to you in August that helps increase compensation for everybody. And then the one thing we want people to hear out of this meeting is that we do anticipate bringing a compensation plan to you in August. And so when Jennifer passes, goes to pass the budget a week from today, just understanding that our current comp plan will roll into essentially 25, 26 until we bring that compensation plan. So that could be confusing for some people if they see that online and it's like nothing has changed other than 24, 25 has changed to 25, 26. And so there'll be some work that goes on behind with that as well. Once that, usually we pass a comp plan in May. And so anyone that we're bringing on for the July 1 date, we're able to quote them salaries for that. So we're having to quote old salaries. So there's been some conversations, a lot of conversations with Julie Cornish, our compensation coordinator, who is amazing and has done a really good job of working with people as we're onboarding them to understand that, we're hopeful in August. I say that in case you all get questions about that. So I don't really have a lot to talk about for comp. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay. All right, let's talk about health insurance. And so just a little bit of history. In 21-22, Georgetown transitioned away from TRS Active Care. That's when we decided to start working with a third-party administrator and went with Cigna and Allegiance at the time to transition away from that TRS Active Care. Our current district contribution is $422 per employee. 2019 through 2023, our contribution was at $378. In prior years to that, it was at $341. And so we are also hoping to bring a potential increase to the contribution to you all in August, should the budget allow for that. Moving forward in 25-26, we will transition with Blue Cross Blue Shield and with Higginbotham, who will be our new third-party administrator. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of a third-party administrator for us is Jennifer's team and my team work really closely with, will work closely with Higginbotham. We meet with them monthly to go over the state of our account, if you will, to make sure that we're staying in a place where our account is functioning in a healthy way. We talk about, they help build our plans each year, and so they make recommendations to us based on claims and past history, how we should build our comp plan moving forward so that it's sustainable from a financial perspective. And then really just support our team and our employees. We'll have access to them. They'll have, actually one thing with our new TPA that we've not been able to, that we've not had in the past is they will have an employee that is accessible to our employees, I think from like 7 in the morning until 5 or 6 at night. They can call and ask questions, which we've not had that before. So that'll be really helpful to Brooke, who's our compensation and benefits coordinator. So lots of things that Higginbotham has been able to present to us that we feel like will be a benefit to the district. So we're excited about working with them. All right, currently we're on a self-funded insurance plan. So 4 just kind of really quick things to summarize this. Try to summarize it as easily as I can. So it is employer funded, meaning that we're responsible for all the financial costs of the plan, and the plan is funded through monthly premiums that we collect. And so the risk retention is that we assume the risk associated with the healthcare costs, meaning we benefit when claims are lower, and then we're financially responsible and liable when they're higher. So it's kind of like your basic monthly, right? The more money I have coming in, I don't want more going out than coming in, or otherwise we're going into debt.
Do we insure against that risk?
To some degree, yeah. Do you want to talk about the stop loss?
Stop loss, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and jump in, Jennifer. So our stop loss is currently at $325,000, which means that if there is a claim above
That exceeds
$325,000,
that,
as soon as we,
This policy will kick in to pick up
That's right.
next, whatever.
That's right.
Okay.
But if you have a series of $325,000
Sure,
claims,
you still have a risk.
There's a gap.
it's a risk.
This is the mitigation tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. There is flexibility with a self-funded plan in the plan design and the cost management of it, which allows us to tailor our benefits to the needs of employees. So if we're running well one year, right, that money may be able to, for example, go back into asking for a higher contribution for our employees. And so if we have a really good year at the end, it's easier than potentially pulling it from general fund. We could use that money to help with that cost piece. And then the potential savings, if claims are less than expected, the plan can save money and we can pass it on to our employees, for example, through that, lower premiums, etc. All right, health insurance overall is on the rise, and so we're seeing that across districts everywhere. Everybody's premiums are going up. This year, our plan in 24-25 was funded at 100% for the expected coverage amount. Next year, we're recommending that we fund at 115% to cover unforeseen high-cost claims with our plan, and after final rates are set, we're hoping to bring a recommendation for an increase to the contribution. So that again is something that currently as we're onboarding employees, we have rates that we're showing, but we're communicating each Wednesday during our new hire sessions that the hope is that we'll be able to bring a contribution increase to you all for recommendation, which will help those premiums go down. But between now and August, we'll have to give out the rates as is.
Just to articulate to the board, is 115% of coverage funding pretty much an industry standard in education right now?
It is. In fact, Higginbotham said that in most cases, districts will fund at about 125%. If we had gone from 100% funding to 125, it would have been just too much for our employees. Yeah. And so we do feel like, just based on what we've seen this last year in claims, that we do need a little bit of I liken it to like a rainy day fund, right? Like a little bit of a savings. And so we really hate passing that on, but we're hopeful for the contribution increase.
Do we have a savings right now for health insurance based upon premiums? For the microphone.
You mean like the balance?
No.
Yeah, and
No.
then, so we don't, and then what happens in a school district if we exceed 100% of the projected claims? That how do we make up the difference?
We'll do an operating transfer, we'll pay for it.
Yeah, so the same funding that helps take care of compensation and operate a school district then becomes responsible for covering claims that exceeded the projection, which becomes a bigger problem for the school district.
Does our TPA handle like cost controls? Meaning like if teacher schedules are not very conducive to just going to a regular doctor, so I'm assuming a lot of times we're ending at really expensive urgent care type facilities. Do they analyze and kind of advise you guys on, we need to add?
They
whatever
do.
these
And one of the
changes
things that Higginbotham has offered to do, which we're really excited about, is they're going to come out and help with our open enrollment in a way that we've not necessarily had before, which will be helpful. And then also offering to come out, and this will be something we'll have to partner with campuses and departments on, but they're wanting to do some, because a lot of it's just about education of how to use your plan. And when you can learn how to use it in certain ways, to your point, you can save a lot of money. Yeah. So they've offered to do that where we've not been able to do that before, and so that'll, I think, really help. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't need this answered right now, but I'm curious if we compare our health insurance offerings to employees against other districts. If we were to think of this, and we may already do this, think of it as like the compensation package that we're competitive with. So if we do look at that and are able to share that with folks.
Yeah, the challenge with, compensation's pretty easy, right, to look at in terms, let me back up. Compensation's not easy, but the compensation, like let's just say teacher's pay scale, it's pretty easy to look at what a 0-year teacher makes in Georgetown versus it, right? It's posted with self-funded plans, because many of our neighboring districts use self-funded plans, and so much of it depends on the claims that hit you that year, and then how much you funded above that 100%. So sometimes it's not as easy to compare apples to apples, but the things that we do look at is, for sure, is like contribution, right? And how much are our neighboring districts, and we're a little bit behind in that, and so that's really one of the reasons we want to be able to bring that to you. Good question. All right, I think next steps here, so June 16th, we'll approve the 25-26 budget, and then of course the August 4th board workshop, we'll discuss employee compensation plan and a budget amendment based on that, and then August 18th, regular board of trustees meeting to approve it.
Mr. West Vanacek.
All right.
Projects proposed for funding via unspent bond funds. Trustees, just to be clear, there's no action item today, but we want to preview this for you for a possible action item at the next regular board.
All righty, thank you. And teammate Clint Pruitt join us up here. opportunity to answer any questions we can't get to. So, a couple of you are on the bond advisory committee, so thank you for your time and energy on that committee. But we have a committee that basically reviews requests for the use of unspent bond funds. And this is from our 21 bond props. And so the 4 projects that are before you have gone through both an internal vetting and ranking process, and as well as our bond advisory committee process. So this is what we have for you today. We do anticipate bringing this to you for approval next week. We want to get any questions answered for you today. So high-level overview, we've got 4 projects. The first is Tippett Middle School track updates and additions. Second is a CT ag truck. Third, the behavioral ILC specialized classroom furniture. And we'll show some photos of what we're talking about there. And then a hitting facility, indoor hitting facility over at the Eastview High School. So the first is Tippett Middle School's track updates. So Tippett is the remaining middle school in the school district that doesn't have a full set of track facilities. They don't have a pole vault pit there. The scoreboard is kind of in disrepair, and overall that site needs an update to bring it up to competition standards, as well as just commensurate standards with the rest of our middle school facilities. So right now, that's essentially kind of the high level overview. Right now, our kids, if they're doing pole vault, they are bussed over to Eastview once or twice a week to try to get that instruction there, so they're not able to receive instruction at their home campus. So this is something that we in the committee felt like was a necessary update. And I'll take questions after each one if that's all right. And then, so any questions on the Tippett? Otherwise, I'll just be blowing through these guys. So we'll see what happens. The second is CT Ag Truck. With the growing ag program, we have a growing need for vehicles. Right now, we do have ag parents that are using their own vehicles along with district trailers. Not the best setup. We want to make sure that we have dependable and safe operating vehicles for these programs. So this is really hauling animal projects as well as ag mech projects to and from shows or to and from the vet, that kind of stuff. So I'll pause again for questions.
And it's just a shared resource for all of that?
That's correct, yes, sir. Yep. All right, the next one, over at GHS, we have a behavioral ILC unit. It's the only one in the district at the high school level. And what they've requested, they identified this need, and the special education team has made this request through the committee, and it is for specialized classroom furniture. So this furniture would be in classrooms for students that have both behavioral and cognitive disabilities, and so it is designed specifically for their needs. Here's just a couple examples. This isn't exactly what would be bought, but similar. So this example is, they call it indestructible or unbreakable. So this furniture wouldn't necessarily break. It's also soft, so it's less likely to injure either a student or staff that's in the room. Some other examples are pieces that are less likely to be moved in a quick manner, if that makes sense. Right? So they're a little bit more fixed, but also comfortable, and just kind of creates the right atmosphere for those students. Also brings just a different environmental feel to the room as well. So this was also one that, and I appreciate Sherry and her team for coming in and enlightening the committee and kind of, what in the world are you talking about? Show us some examples. So, and then lastly, the Eastview High School softball hitting facility. So this is kind of a parity project. So right now GHS has the indoor hitting facility at both baseball and softball. Eastview does not have it at softball. For the new high school, we have these facilities in the plans, and so these are instructional facilities. These are where kids would be in those facilities every single day, taking hitting and sometimes throwing instruction as well. So this would be a project to make it commensurate with currently at GHS, but then with the onset of the new high school.
Whereabouts would it go? You know?
We don't have a site plan developed yet, so I can't place it exactly. Obviously, in close proximity to the softball complex, but yeah.
Probably adjacent to the current cages.
There you go. Adjacent to the current cages. Yeah. All right. Like I said, no action today, just information. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Or
Is the 615 all that's left out of the 2021? Are there remaining unused bond funds after this?
no, there's
Yeah,
There's additional funds
Yeah.
technically available.
That's 650, just the total.
It's just
For
the
sure,
total.
I was just asking if that was a use of everything we had available, or if there will still
Not
be
yet.
No,
potential
there's still more.
other things that will come.
And we're about 1% away from closing out all of those projects as well, so there's still
So
much
much
last trickle.
And then you'll get a final number, and we'll see this exercise an additional time.
That's right.
And then I think Dr. Paddle and I talked at one point about just the benefit of, to the community of reusing or using these unutilized or savings. It's really what they are from what was approved versus maybe the return of it to pay down debt or something.
Yes,
Did you
sir, I
talk
mean,
to that at all?
yeah, we're always looking at opportunities to refund debt, but at the same time, all of these projects, as they're necessary, they get paid in one of two ways. Either we have to go out for a future bond and ask for the funds to take care of these needs, or we have to go into our regular operating budget, with which 88% of which is payroll, and find the funds there to take care of these. So using bond savings ends up being something that helps us allocate money to our people, and potentially is cost savings to the community, because cost escalation could say that, if we went out for a bond in 2027 or 28, those costs would arguably go up.
And additionally, the rate we borrowed this money at is significantly cheaper than today's rate that we would have to
That's right.
borrow against if we wanted to put this off.
That's correct.
So,
And Wes and
Yes, ma'am.
Clint, I really enjoy being on the bond committee, even though I'm a non-voting member. But I really, really learn a lot by sitting there and hearing the discussion and the recommendations. So thank you for letting me sit there.
Thank you for your time.
So another comment, I appreciate that, like cost 1 and 4, we're looking at parity across the campuses to ensure students are having a similar experience no matter where they are, so I hope that continues.
Absolutely. Trying to get into a situation where we don't have to keep redoing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
that's the challenge.
that's what we got. Thank you.
Trustees, this concludes our board workshop, and unless there's any other questions, we will conclude.
Awesome. No, thank you.
All right, this concludes our board workshop.